have to get our fabric ready, and here is my non-woven interfacing, and I have some fusible, so I'm going to fuse it on the back. If you don't have fusible, you'll just sew everything together, and I'm going to press this down. Now notice that I'm right at the edge of my fabric, and I really don't want my fusible to stick on here, so I'm going to stay pressed in this area, because when I put my template on, it doesn't need the whole area. Otherwise, see how it's trimmed back here? I could just trim it back. And when we press, we just press and lift it up, press, because what we're doing is melting the glue on the back of the interfacing to stick to the fabric. So you'll follow whatever manufacturer's instructions that you have for yours. And again, if you have just plain non-woven interfacing that isn't fusible, then you'll just sew it in and pin it. In this case, we're going to clip it. And I am going to turn it over and do it from this side. And again, I'm going to stay away from those edges, and I can just kind of go back and forth here and just get a little more glue melted there. And we would do that with all the pieces. So I have my pieces already with my interfacing. So I'm going to get those ready. Had to just turn my iron off. Okay, so these are the front side of the mask. This is the back of the front side, and these are my backs, or what I'm going to refer to as the pocket. So I want to have these so they are right sides together before I cut. And the reason is when I cut, well, let me get my front piece. When I cut, this here is going to be a seam, which is right down through the middle of your nose and the middle of your mouth. So I have to have one going in one direction, one going in the other. So when I put my fabrics right sides together, then I know that I'm going to have a left and right side, but also I'll be actually ready to sew them together at the same time. So I'm just going to clip out here for now, because I don't want to use pins and stick a lot of holes in the fabric, because that's where your particles could get through. Having the interfacing helps protect you from some of that the fabric can't. So we're going to have double fabric on the front, and then the pocket, and all three of those things with the interfacing will be before your face, not including the filter that's going to be put in. So I can either trace this, or I can go ahead and cut it. So I'm going to trace it just so you can see how this is done. So I'm going to trace it, and I'm just using a regular pen, so you can use a fabric marking pen. It doesn't really matter. I just want you to be able to see it. Let me make it a little darker. Doesn't have to be pretty. And if you're making a lot of these, you will probably want to do one step on everything at a time. I would go ahead and make my first mask one, and then when you've got that down pat, then I would assembly line them. So this is not going to be my cut line. Okay, I need to add my 1/4 inch in, and if you remember, we wrote that right on here. Now I don't have any seam allowance on this side, so I'm going to put no seam, just to remind me I can cut right at this very edge. So I'm going to cut this side first, because that reminds me that I'm just going to cut right along that edge. And I can cut right on the line, right next to the line. And I don't have my big scissors here. You could take your big scissors to cut this. And then I'm going to make sure I clip there, to hold everything together as I go around. Now I'm going to bring this up. I should have cut a little further. And now I want to cut a 1/4 inch or so above that line. I don't have to be exact. If you need to draw another line, you can do that as well. And once I finish that side, I'm going to clip it. And again, I'm going to put this clip on. I can add another one on, just to keep everybody together, because I'm lifting it and turning it. And now you can see that I've got that seam allowance. So I'm really stitching right on that, right on the pencil line, because this is where your nose is. So I'm going to be stitching here. So I'm going to set this aside with the other one. I'll do the other one the same. And let me now grab the pocket one, or the back. Again, right sides together. I'm going to put my back piece on. I'm going to clip around. Just to hold my fabrics together. And again, I can draw it. So that you can see. So I have my lines. Now on this one, it's 1/4 inch seams all the way around. So I'm going to cut out, further out all the way around. So I'll just start right here. And I'm keeping my fabric down as much as I can, because, and I would use, generally I would use my regular shears. I don't have them in front of me right now. I thought these would work well, but I think they're a little draggy. And it doesn't have to be perfectly pretty. And I'm going to take this clip, and this clip, put it there. And I should have stopped and put this clip on as I went by there, but I kept right on going. Let me put this clip on. Okay, and see, again, you can see the seam allowance, the extra out there, because I'm going to be really stitching on that line. So let me get my other front done, and then we'll get on to the next step. Okay, while we have the iron out and the mat out, we can go ahead and press our ties. And there, I refer to it as binding ties, because it's going to be the binding over the top and bottom of the mask, and it's also going to be the ties to go around your head. So with the wrong side facing up, pretty side facing down, I'm going to put a little spray starch, best press, whichever you like to use, And I want to fold this in half so your raw edges meet, and just press it down. And if you press along slowly, using a big iron is probably easier because it's a heavier one. But you see, with using the spray starch or the best press, it'll help keep that in place. And I would just go ahead down a length of it. I'm doing a small part here on this little mat. Normally with my woolen mat, I wouldn't be spraying my spray starch on this. I would use my regular ironing board. But for the sake of the video, it's a lot easier for you to see it on something smaller. So I'm just doing it lightly, just towards the center. For now, we're not going to worry about finishing off the edges or cutting the salvage off. That's that little excess piece until we get the mask further along. That way you can do your ties to suit you or to suit whoever is going to be wearing it, because this is 42 inches of length here. So just go ahead and get your 2 ties done, and you'll just be setting them aside for a few minutes. The next part of the mask I want to get ready is the part I use for the nose. And this was one of those aluminum foil pans that you cook in and then throw it out of, and I just kind of flattened it out. If you cut your corners in, then it'll all flatten out. And I'm going to use my junk scissors for this, and I want to measure this to be about 2 inches across. So I'm going to go like right about here, and then I want to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go up 5. Okay, and I'm going to set that aside. Now I have a roller presser. If you don't have a roller presser, you can use soup can. Maybe, I'm not sure if it'll be okay with your rolling pin. I don't think it'll harm it, but you want something that can really press this down flat. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold in the edges about a 1/2 inch. Again, doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm just going to really roll that down. And that's just so now I don't have a metal raw edge out here that will rip through the fabric. But you see how nice and it's practically as flat where the fold is. I'm not sure if you can see it, as the rest of it is. Then I'm going to fold in towards the center. So I'm coming in about to the halfway mark. And be careful because it can be sharp. And again, I'm going to press it, roll it down. And once I roll it, I can't change my mind. So now this has a folded edge. This is a folded edge, this one. So now I just got to bring this one in. When I bring this one over, I don't want to bring it all the way out. I'm going to come in, so I'm about right here, a little, maybe 1/8 of an inch. So if you want your nose piece to be a little thinner, you can make it a little shorter. So I just want to make sure that I come in so that I'm not at that edge. I don't want to fold this too many times because right now my sewing machine would actually go through this without any problem. Needle might not like it, but it'll go through it. And again, I'm going to really iron it down. or I call it iron down. This is a wooden rolling iron. So now this becomes my nose piece. And you will bend it to the shape of your nose once you have the mask on you or whoever it's on. So again, I ended up with about a little more than half wide. So maybe if you want to be just half wide, you could cut it maybe 3/4 of an inch. So you can decide, make your first one, see how you like it. And this piece is going to go into the mask before it's finished so that you can try it out. And if you find that's too wide, you can cut it down. So let's get that done, and we can set that one aside as well. Okay, so I thought mine was going to be a little too wide. So what I'm going to do is I opened it up. I didn't unfold my ends, but I'm going to come in and I'm going to trim some off. And I'll trim some off the other side. And I'm going to roll it. See how the creases are here? I'm going to put it down and I'm going to crease it, or flatten those creases out as best I can. Then I'm going to refold it in. To the center. And then I'm going to bring this one in. And so I ended up making it a little smaller, so that is like a 1/2 inch. So you can just try not to fold it and unfold it, because you'll have like little bumps going on there. So you determine what size you want yours to be. And again, like I said, it'll be going into the mask before the mask is finished. So if you don't like the size of it, you can do a new one. Some people are using those office file clasps. Some people have pipe cleaners. So we're going to make a little, sort of like a little pocket for it. So whatever you decide to use, that'll work. We are ready for our first sewing step, and we're going to be sewing the, let me turn it this way. Let me zoom back a bit. There we go. We're going to be sewing what is the curved piece, or the curved section. That'll be the nose section. Make sure that you have right sides together, and that's the only part we're sewing. And you can use your, if you drew the line, you can use your line to draw on. And we're going to sew the back, or what I'm calling the pocket, and then we're going to sew the two fronts together, one at a time. Oops, sorry for my hand in your way. I want to make sure that I lock at the beginning of my stitches. So if you have a machine that either locks in place, or you can use your back and go back and forward, just so you have a lock stitch. Regular thread, regular sewing thread, and regular needle. I use for this I would use a Microtex 80-12. And you can just take your time as you go around the curve. It's not that big a deal. If you need to stop and lift your foot, mine happens to have a pivot feature that lifts the foot. But if you don't, just reach back, lift the foot up, and it just helps relax that fabric. And if you have that line drawn, you can just sew right on your line. And again, when you get to the end, you can lock it, or you can use your back to lock it. And you're going to do all three pieces the same exact way. When you do your stitching, don't start at where the line is. Let me show you. So I wouldn't start at where the line starts. I'm going to start where the fabric starts. Start at the end, come out and lock, go back 3, forward 3, come all the way around to the other side, go to the edge again, lock it, go back 3, forward 3, and do that on all 3 pieces. When you finish sewing the 2 fronts and the back, you're going to take all your pins off, open it up, and it's not going to open all the way because it's got that curve to it. So I have my finger right here, and I'm just kind of finger pressing this open. If you have a ham, which is a rounded stuffed ironing device, then you can go ahead and use that. But I'm just coming around and flattening that out. And you want to do that on all 3 pieces. Okay, once I have all the seams pressed open, I want to take the back piece for the moment, the pocket, and set it aside. So I have my 2 fronts. I want to make sure I run my finger underneath that seam so there's no creases on the outside. Same with this one. See, I don't want to have any creases on this outside. Then I'm going to sew these 2 together, wrong sides together. So I'm going to start at this end. I'm going to get some clips out here. I'm going to clip, and I want to make sure that I clip with, you see how the clip has a flat side and a round side. The flat side's always clear. I want the flat side down so that against my machine bed I don't have that curve. I'm going to come up and make sure my seams are in the same place, front and back. I'm going to put a clip before it and one after it. And probably at this point you really need to push this one side into the other side. See how I've got a pocket now. And I'm just going to come around and clip. I'm going to make sure I go to my end and then work my way back up to clip, because the curve, see how the curve will work in the fabric as you go. If you go from the center out, you'll end up one side shorter than the other. Okay, so I've just got my top, and I know my top is up. See how you can see let me see if I can show you. See the shape of it? So this would be your, look, this would be your top. Okay, and we're going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch it. So I'm ready. I'm ready to stitch my top, my fronts together just at the top where we just clipped. And I want to stay with, oh, pardon my hand here a minute. I want to be less than 1/4 of an inch. So 1/8 of an inch. So let me find a little pointer here. So 1/8 of an inch would be, let me see. So if I hold this up, the 1/4 inch would be about that distance, and you can measure it, and then halfway in between the edge and that 1/4 inch would be where you want to stitch, because don't go too close to the edge because you don't want to fall off the edge. But if you come in a little ways from the edge, that way when we put the binding on and the strap, this stitching isn't going to show. And we're stitching this now just to hold these 2 pieces together. And as I come in, I'm going to hang on to this and make sure I keep both the pieces nice and flat. So I'm going to keep stopping and adjusting my hand and adjusting the fabric. So now when I get in towards this middle, I'm trying to make sure the focus comes in here. There we go. When I get in towards this middle, I'm pushing I'm pushing the fabric out. It was trying to pop this way towards me. I'm pushing it out so that this can lay nice and flat. And I can lock it at the beginning and the end. I don't have to because I'm going to be coming back over this. But for now, we're going to just go ahead and lock it again. Lock it if you want to, if it makes you more comfortable. So now I have my stitching. So my 1/4 inch would be right about here. And that is completing just that top part of the front. So I've just completed that stitching around the top, and now I want to close up my sides. So I'm going to turn this inside out so we have wrong sides together, and I'm going to you see I'm on the short side. So on both ends, short sides, we need to sew that. So I'm going to put a couple clips on, go around to the other side, make sure that seam is there's no crease there. So if you need to iron it, go ahead. And see, now I have both ends, right sides together. So now I'm going to go stitch those. Okay, so I'm back at the sewing machine and I'm getting ready to sew the ends. And these I can do my regular 1/4 inch. So generally I just follow along I'm trying to do that without my hand being in the way, the edge of my foot. My needle's in the center and the edge of my foot is with the edge of the fabric. And I want to make sure that at this end I don't have any tucks or anything in from the seam that we just made. And again, I can lock it. And I'm going to stitch right up to the other end. And I'm going to lock it. I'm going to go ahead and do my other side, and I want to make sure that I push this up so I don't have a fold where that seam is. The seam would be laying flat. And see how I got a little extra fabric out there? That's okay. I'm okay. So I'm going to get at the beginning. I'm going to use that fabric that's the furthest out. See how you can see the purple a little bit? So that's what I'm going to use for my seam allowance. Maybe come in just a tad more because I want to make sure I get all this fabric. And again, I can lock it. And at the end. Okay, so now I'm gonna meet you over at the iron. Okay, so I'm over at the iron, but the first thing I do is trim some seams, and I don't need this full. Can you see that? I don't need this full 1/4 inch seam, so I'm going to trim some of it off. So see, can you see okay? There we go. Don't get too close now. And see, this was my side that was not all even, so now it will be when I trim this up. Okay, and I also want to clip these seams, because I have a curve here. So let me move my iron a minute, and let me see if I can zoom down a little, because I have to. So I zoomed in a little closer so you can see that I'm on that curve, which is that nose piece, and I'm going to clip almost up to the stitches. I don't want to clip the stitches, and this just helps the fabric spread out for that curve. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So let me see if I can show you. There. See the little clips? So you want to do that on both sides. And then we'll get to the ironing. So before I turn this right side out, I'm going to trim off this little corner. Just a little bit, because it has some bulk to it. So do you see how I trimmed off that little corner? And I'm going to come over to the other side, and I'm going to trim off that little corner. Oh, and there's that corner. So I have done my little cutting all the way up into my edges, and now I'm ready to turn this right side out. And I want to make sure that I poke out my ends, so you can use a chopstick or a turner. Let me see if I got something to. You don't want to use the end of your scissors, and you just want to make that corner as nice as possible. And this raw edge is going to be covered, so it'll be okay. And again, I want to make sure that this is nice and flat, and I can push that seam to one side. That's okay. So I'm going to give that a little press. See if you can see it without my fingers being in your way. So I'm just making sure that here's my seam, and I'm just going to make sure. Let me see if I can turn it. There you go. My seam is right here, and I'm just going to come in with my iron and just give that a little press. And that, oh, hot. And then that just makes that nice and flat there. Then I'm going to fold it so my seam is right on my edge. I don't have any creases, and I'm just going to give that a press. So let me just do the other side. Let me see if we can back up a little bit on the zoom. Oh, wrong way. Here we go. So I'm just turning this other side, right side out. And actually I had enough that my finger right in there pushed that out. I want to make sure this doesn't have any creases in it. I'm going to lay it on my pressing mat. Oop, give me 1 minute to get everything out of your way. And I want to make sure that seam is nice and flat. Can you see right here? It's nice and flat. And I can just go in there with the iron or the tip of my iron. And then when I open this up again, now this can stay nice and flat. Oh, I didn't get all that seam out. I mean that corner out. Make sure I got all that corner out, and then just give that a press. And one side is pushed into the other side. You can decide which one you want to be your outside. I'm going to set that aside for a second because I need to press my. I did the same thing with my pocket piece. I've done the cutting. See, I've done all the cutting. Okay? But now I need to make sure these edges, they're raw edges. This is going to be where your filter goes in and out. So I'm going to turn this about 1/4 of an inch You don't have to be exact. And I'm going to give that a good press. Hold that down for a minute. Then I'm going to turn it one more time. Probably it is whatever, I've turned it wherever the inside fabric ended. So it's covered, that raw edge is covered. Okay, I'm going to put a couple clips in. And I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Okay, so we're now ready to sew this is the two ends of the pocket. So I'm going to stitch down, just down the center of those. Again, I can lock my stitch. And lock my stitch, and it sounds like I need a new needle from the sounds of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my other side. This stitching does show on the back, so if you really want to be, you know, you can be matchy-matchy if you want to. And I'm going to lock that. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a little press, and I'll be right back to sew again. The next thing I need to do, we've got now our ends are nice and tidy, and I've just pressed them. These nice edges are done, and we've pressed them. So this, you have to decide what's the front of your mask. So this pocket is going to fit into the back of the mask, and we're only going to sew it at the top. So I'm going to line up the center seam with the center seam, and I'm just going to come out around, and I just kind of smooth it, again coming from the center out. Oh, keep dropping my clips. And I'm going to come back on the other side and come from the center out. And it's not supposed to be at the end because we got to have room to get that filter in there. So it's not meant to go edge to edge. And I'm going to sew again like I did before. Remember how we sewed right here? Now you can follow from this side if you want to. I'm going to do it from this side so you can see it a little better. But I need to start at this beginning. I'm on the top. The bottom is all, everything's still open at the bottom. And I'm going to stitch right along across from one end to the other. And I'm going to lock it. And I'm going to try to do this without my hands being in your way too much. Let's see if we can zoom in a little more. And hope it should stay in focus. And I can start, so see how it's, I got all this in my way. I can start back here. I just got to make sure that I don't flip this up, flip this up as I come by. So you don't have to aim for exactly that spot, but I want to sew in about the same area that I sewed originally. So I can go ahead and lock it. And remember, I want less than 1/4 of an inch. Taking my clips out, but when I take my clips out, I want to check to make sure that, see, I don't want this fabric riding up. Everybody's got to stay together. So I want to make sure that my underneath fabric is in line with my pocket fabric. And I'm keeping my fabric nice and flat. I don't care about what's curving on up over here. All I care about is right here. And again, I can sew off of that edge if I need to. I'm going to go ahead and lock it. And then we'll get ready for the next part. So I just want to show you and get the focus in. See how, well, let's get it into focus here. Hold on. Can you see how my stitching is right near that, right near the edge? We're not too close. And you see how I have this extra fabric here? I can go ahead and trim that out. See how it is right there? I'm going to go ahead and trim that out so that everybody's nice and even. There. And just, oh, trying to get to where it isn't fuzzy. Okay, so I sewed a little bit past, and that's okay. And I started a little bit before, and that's okay as well. So now we'll get to the next section. Okay, now we have sewn two fronts together, wrong sides together, and we've added the pocket on. So now I'm going to insert this piece. And this is really going to depend on what you use to put in here, because I know some things are hard to get a hold of. But what I want to do is I'm going to lift this the back pocket out of the way, and I'm going to open this up. Hopefully I can open it up so you can see. And I'm going to put this in flat so it's all the way up against the seam. Can you see there? All the way up against the seam. And I'm going to pull this down, but I'm going to leave this part up. And then I'm going to turn it around to the front because I think it's easier for you to see. Let me do it this way. So see, here's my metal piece. I want to find out where the middle is, so I'm just going to give it a little fold so I know where the middle is. And I'm going to stick it in here, butting up against the seam. And then bring this down. And I want to make sure that I'm pushing it up against. Okay, and if you want to, if you're not sure what you're putting in, I would simply come across here and just stitch across so you have a little pocket area and you can slide something in from either side. So the big point I want to stress is when we put the binding on, it's going to stitch a little bit down in here. So you can leave it so that you don't put anything in there, and leave about a 1/2 inch, and then stitch from the center about 2 inches on each side, and then you can slide something in and out of there before you sew up the bottom if you're not sure what you're going to be putting in there yet. So I'm pushing that up as far as I can. And I'm going to draw a little line so that you can see it. So let me just get my marker and I'll be right back. So I got one of my friction pens. You can really use anything here because don't forget this is this is the front. So if I want to mark it on the back, I can, because this will go over it. So if you don't have something good to, something that erases or goes away. So I'm flipping this up so I can keep this flat, and I'm going to mark it. I can feel it, and when you're doing yours, you can feel where it is and know where to sew beside it. But I wanted to show you about where it would be. So if you I just got to turn it so I can. Okay, so can you see the line I drew right there going across? So if you don't know what you're going to put in, or you're concerned with whatever you're putting in might get caught in the stitching of the binding, you can stitch a little further down and just leave it open on each side. Put your binding on first, and then put something in there, depending what you have. But I know this aluminum pan will stitch through okay because I've already stitched through it. So I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the sewing machine, and I'll try to do it from this direction so that you can see how I'm going to stitch along, just to keep that metal piece encased. So I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Okay, so we're over at the sewing machine ready to sew this in place, and I've got the metal piece is inside of here, and I'm going to push it towards the seam. I'm going to keep this out of my way. I want to make sure my front of my mask is not all wrinkled up in the back. And I'm just going to smooth the fabric out. I'm trying to keep my hands out of your way as much as I can. I can feel that my metal piece is starting here, so I'm going to just start a little before it, but I'm going to be inside of this, so when this comes over, it's all underneath. And I'm going to make sure I do a locking stitch at the beginning. And as I'm doing this, I want to push this fabric over this way, so this stays nice and flat. I'm pulling up on my front fabric, so I know that underneath here I don't have a lot of wrinkles going on. And if you get a little tuck or two, it's okay. And I'm just going to feel where that is, or if you made the mark. And you can hear I'm hitting or stitching actually that foil, metal, I guess it is, but it's not metal, it's like a heavy tin foil. And I want to make sure that I don't have any tucks. And I can come up the side to hold that in, but I'm just going to go straight here because I don't think it's going to go anywhere. No, but if you wanted to go up the side, you just turn and then come right up the side. And again, I'm holding this one out of the way, and I'm just going to do a lock in place. So now I only have one side open. And if you want, you can come to the other side and just feel where that metal piece starts. So it all depends on what you're comfortable with, because you don't want to sew through something that you know it's going to hurt your machine. So you just have to be careful there. Oh, so I meant to. Let me make sure. Okay. So I'm just going to lock it in place. And then I'm going to stitch up. And then I'm going to lock it again. So let me see if I can show you that from the front so you get an idea of what it is. So can you see my stitching? So my metal piece is inside of this stitching because I pushed it up against my stitching I already had. And then I went around to I got a little mess going there. I went around the sides. So see, I came up the side. Now this metal piece isn't going to move out. Once this is closed up, you can't get into it anyway. But I only did it that way in case you have something, you know, right now it's hard to get the supplies you might want. So if you have something that is heavier than what your machine can go through, then make your pocket, oops, excuse me, go ahead and make your pocket first, slide it in, and then close up the sides if you want to. But if you have a metal piece that's too heavy to sew through, we're going to put the binding on next on the top. Put your binding on first, and then come in and slide your metal piece in and close it up on each side. So let's get on to the next part. Next, we're going to attach the binding to the top. Remember, we've already pressed this. I want to find the center. I want to find the center of the binding and just put a little crease there. And I'm going to attach this to the back side, and I'm going to put that crease right where my seam is, my center seam, and I'm going to pin it or clip it. And then I'm going to, like we did before, I'm going to work my way over to this edge. And then I'm going to go in the other direction. And work my way over to this edge. Okay, because, so can you see? And I'm going to sew. I'll start a little bit off, and I'm going to come right across, and then come a little bit off over here. And this is going to be my regular 1/4 inch seam. So let's head over to the sewing machine. Okay, we're at the sewing machine ready to sew our binding tie, and we're on the wrong side, or the back side of the mask. Here's the front side, here's the back where the pocket is. I've got it clipped on. I'm going to start sewing a little bit down here and come up onto this so I don't have to fight with this edge. And I want my regular 1/4 inch seam. And it doesn't have to be a perfect 1/4 inch, but somewhere in there. And I'm going to lock it only because sometimes it's just easy to lock so it doesn't come undone on you when you're working with it. I'm going to make sure that this mask underneath is staying even with my binding. And I'm holding this down as I go, just keeping it flat. And I'm only concerning myself with this little bit here until I get up further. I'm not worried about what's happening way up here. And again, I'm flattening out the pocket and the mask, and I'm making sure that I'm staying. My mask is still right underneath my binding. Now I'm going to be coming over all of those seams, so it's going to feel a little clangy, or sound a little clangy. Again, I'm stopping. I want to double check again, make sure that I'm lined up with my fabric that's underneath, or my mask that's underneath. And I can feel that I hit my little aluminum. And I'm going to just keep right on going. And I'm off the mask now, and I'm just going to lock it. So here we have, this is sewn because this is going to come around to the front and over, and it's going to cover the raw edge. Okay, when we get to that part. So let's get ready for our next part. Okay, so now we've got that piece sewn, and we sewed it from the back coming to the front. So what I want to do now is I'm going to start in the center, and I'm just going to give this a little tug that way, and I'm going to pull it over so it's covering the stitching I did before, and I'm going to clip it. And again, I'm working my way down from the center. And I want to make sure I get all these little threads out. If you find that when you pull this over it's not covering your stitching, trim away a little bit of the mask itself up here where this before the stitching, so that you can get this firmly over enough to cover whatever stitching there was or is. And I'm going to come out here, and you could iron at this point. I'm going to fold these in from the bottom, so these are the raw edges that are in this seam now. I'm going to fold this in. It's going to want to naturally come in because we used it as a seam allowance. And then I'm going to fold this one over, and I'm going to clip. And I'm just going to go a little ways on each side. So I'm going to make sure I put another clip right there. And then again, I'm starting from the center, working my way out, keeping this fabric flat. Getting rid of all these extra threads. And see how this automatically wants to turn under. So I'm just going to turn that under. Again, you can take it to the iron. It's just sometimes a little difficult to not burn your fingers because you're working with such a little piece. But I'm just going to bring this in. And I'm just going to put a couple of clips in to go part way. So see how we are? So let's go over and sew. Okay, so we're over at the sewing machine. We're getting ready to sew. And I'm going to start sewing around here somewhere. And I'm going to go up and over and stop at the same place, because then I can turn and I can concentrate on going out with the rest of this when I get the important part done. So I'm just going to slide my clip down a little bit so that I can get under the foot, and I'm going to line up so that the edge, oh, I'm right on the clip. That wasn't good. I'm still on the clip. Let me move that clip further down. And I want my needle, see if I can zoom in a little more for you. I want my needle to come down along this folded edge. So instead of bringing my foot down first, I'm going to bring my needle down using my wheel. I'm just going to bring my needle down, and I want to make sure that clip behind me is out of the way, and then I can put my foot down. Let's see if it's clear enough there for you. Okay, I'm going to do a locking stitch here. And I'm going to just stitch along. Take my time. I came up over that seam just fine. And I'm stitching about just a little ways from this edge. When I'm done, I'll show you, because it'll be easier for you to see then. I want to make sure that I keep that fabric nice and flat. Let me zoom back a little bit. I think it doesn't want to focus as well that close. There we go. I'm coming in the area near my little metal piece. Again, making sure. Let's get our focus going here. There we go. I'm making sure that I push this fabric so it keeps staying flat because we're working on a curve. When I take my, when I take my pin out, my clip off, I'm holding this with my finger because there's nothing else to hold it. And I definitely need to put in a new needle. And again, I want to make sure I'm flattening this and I'm bringing that binding over. Oh, so I'm pulling that binding that way. And now I'm coming off the mask and onto just the, I'm sorry, because every time I get my hand in the way, it throws the focus off. But I'm coming off the mask now and just coming a little ways onto the strap. And I'm making sure that I'm stitching on this folded piece to hold it down so I can just stitch, and I'm just going to keep right on going so you can see how it works. Trying to keep my hands out of your way. I apologize if I keep getting them in the way. And I'm pressing down, holding this down. And I apologize for the loud needle. Now I'm down at this end, and if I'm not sure how long I want this to be, I would have stopped a ways back, tried it on whoever was going to wear it, and fixed it then. I find that I trimmed one and then I wished I hadn't, so I just go to the end now. So I'm going to cut that. I had the salvage edge, rough edge, so I'm just going to open this up. I'm going to open this up, and I'm just going to finger press this flat, and then I can close it up again. And you see how I've got all this extra up here? I'm just going to snip it off. So I'm going to fold in. I'm going to fold it in and, let me see, I'm trying to do this now. Fold it in and fold it over. And again, if you want to do that little part and clip it before you get to the end, you're welcome to, or try it on the person. I've done this so that, I just pulled it apart. I've done this so that you can adjust this as you need to do. So I let go of it. So I'm going to fold this in, finger press it down. So now I have a folded edge right here. I'm going to fold this side in first, like I've been doing. And I want to make sure that what I fold in doesn't hang over. And then I'm going to, let me do that again. Okay. I've opened it all the way up. Let me get my I've opened it all the way up, and I fold it in about a 1/2 inch. Okay? I'm going to fold it in half like it was in the beginning. So I'm going to fold it in half. There we go. Oh. Hold on, I'm trying to hold it so you can see. There we go. I'm going to fold it in half. So now there's a folded edge here, folded edge here. Both my raw edges are on this side. And I'm going to fold this one in, just like I've been doing. And then fold this one over it. And I'm going to hold this with my little pen. I'm going to hold it and hold it to the edge. And I get to the edge. I want to make sure I lock it, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to come forward again a little bit to lock. And this time when I go back, I'm going to stay back and trim it from there. So I'll come ahead a stitch and go ahead and trim it. And I'm going to get rid of my threads. And now I have my end, but you can see where I'm stitching along, holding that fold in. Doesn't have to be way out to the edge. Okay? So now I'm going to do the other side, and this time to show you how you can do it if you don't need to measure, is I'm going to cut that salvage off so that this end is neat. I'm going to go ahead and fold it over about a 1/2 inch. You don't want to fold it too small because it's too hard to hang on to. And then I'm going to fold that back over. And I can, if I want to right now, I can go ahead because this is going to fold in. So if I want to, I can open this up and I can put in a stitch just to hold that in place. Okay? So that when I get to folding and everything, I won't have to struggle with that. So let me pull this back up. And again, I want this setting so the fold, I can see the fold right here. I want it up facing me. Here's where I had started sewing. I'm just going to trim off those threads. And I'm going to start sewing just a little bit before I finished before, or where I started before. So I'm going to put my tie down. I'm going to lower my needle first, so I'm lowering it into where I stitched before. Then I can put my foot down. I can lock in place or stitch back and forth, whichever your machine does. And I can start sewing this end. And again, I'm going to be folding in and folding over, and just go a little ways at a time. And fold in and fold over. Fold in and fold over. This fabric happens to be shredding a lot, and I'll probably have to trim when I'm done, because just the more I touch it, the more it shreds. Fold in, fold over, fold in, fold over. So can you see I'm folding in this one first, folding over that one, because this has the folded edge. This one here has that raw edge. Fold it in, fold it over, fold it in. Oh, let me get rid of some of these threads again down at this end. I get rid of them and more grow back. Okay, fold it in, fold it over, and again I'm pressing down here. And see, because I finished this edge earlier, now it's gonna, I don't have to fight with it as much. I can just fold it and fold it. So if you know your tie is long enough just the way it is, then go ahead and finish your edges before you put your tie or your binding on. I'm going to come down to the end. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go forward a little bit again. I'm going to go back. And then if I don't have lock in place, I'm just going to come forward a couple of stitches and then cut it. And that way I don't have that cut and stuff at the very end. So let me just trim this up. And see? So there's where we stitched across. Oh, there's where we stitched across. And here, so see how it is? And it's, now this might happen to you. You see, I was stitching along. Let's get the camera to focus. And see, I didn't catch this. So I'm going to stop, start here again, and come across. That will happen to you if you go too close to the edge. The other side I didn't go as close to the edge. But this is about where you want to be from the edge. So let me go ahead and fix that, because this will probably happen to you. And again, I'm going to put my needle down a little ways back on the stitching that I already did, then put my foot down. I'm going to do a locking stitch because I'm starting in the middle, and I'm just going to move my stitching over as I come down. Make sure my finger's out of your way. And I'm going to go until I connect up with the other stitching. I'm going to lock that stitch and cut. And let me go ahead and trim. Okay, so I started here again, and see how I needed to move over? And then got in line with the stitching again. So let's go on to the next part. Okay, so we've got our top strap on, and I did this in a different color just so you could see the different pieces. So here, this is our pocket, which means the filter will be going in here. We've got the top all done. Your metal part for your nose is in there, and see how it can shape? Oh, sorry. See how it can shape to your nose? So now we're going to come across the bottom like we did before. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and stitch this part together, and then we'll add on the pocket. Sometimes it's easier to do a little extra stitching so you're not fighting with all those layers trying to keep them together. We think that at times we're saving time by doing all at once, but most of the time we're not saving any time at all. So I'm going to go ahead. My pocket is over here. We're going to meet over at the sewing machine, and we'll do this part. Okay, we're at the sewing machine, and we're working on the bottom of the mask, and we've got the pocket. Let me zoom us back. Oh. There we go. The pocket is still separate. We're working on just putting the two front pieces together. And remember that we stitched inside the 1/4 inch seam, so we're doing like an 1/8 of an inch seam just to hold this together. We don't really need to lock it, but if you're more comfortable locking it, go ahead. I'm staying inside the 1/4 inch, which means I'm staying this way away from the 1/4 inch, which my 1/4 inch would be over here. I want to stay inside of that, which means in between where the stitch should be and the edge of the fabric. As I go, I want to make sure that this lays flat and my front and back are together. The reason we're not using pins is so that we don't poke holes in our mask. I'm going to come to the end. I don't have to go way off the end because I'm just trying to hold these two pieces together. Again, I can lock it if I feel I need to. So see where, do you see where we are? So your 1/4 inch would be about here. Okay, so we've got the top done with the binding on it. We've just stitched the bottom of the two front sections, and we're still loose like this. Now at this point, you may want to try the mask on it, put whoever it's going to go on to, because we may want to take a little dart here, and I'm going to do the dart to show you. We have to do the dart separate on this, separate from this, because if we do the dart all together, that's going to pinch this up, and you might not be able to get your filter in as easy. So let's pull these apart from each other, and we're going to do a little dart. And the dart is sewn from the wrong side. So this is the right side, this is the wrong side. And we're going to fold this over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line. So I'm going to measure over about let me see if this pen will show. I'm going to measure over about a 1/2 inch and make a line. You see that little line I made? And then I'm going to measure up about 1 inch, and I'm going to put, let me see. Yeah, about 1 inch. And again, you can make this longer for someone that's smaller. So can you see those two lines? Here's my first line, here's my ending line, and I'm just going to connect the two on the angle. Can you see that? I'm going to start from this edge, and I'm going to lock my stitch, and I'm going to go down that way. So I'm just going to put a clip there, and I want to do the same thing to this part, so you'll be able to see it easier on here. Okay, so I'm going to go over about a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to go up about 1 inch, and then I'm going to connect the two lines. You see that? And I'm going to stitch from here at the very edge of where the stitching is, or just outside of it, and stitch right down there. So I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Okay, so I've marked my dart, and again I've got right sides together. This is my pocket, and I should have marked the other side, so because I want to go this way, and it's a little, I don't want to come up this way. So I'm just going to transfer my marks to the other side. So I came up about an inch, about an inch up and about a ½ inch over. And let me draw the line and then I'll hold it up. So I'm going to start sewing here, lock my stitch, and sew down to the bottom. So I'm starting, let me get that out of the way, there we go. I'm starting here and I'm sewing that way. So again, I'm going to put my needle down where it needs to go, and I'm just outside of the seam allowance, that way. I'm going to lock my stitch. And then let me lock it. I think my needle came unthreaded. Let me just take care of that. I'm sorry if my hand is in your way. Looks like my thread, oh, there we go. It was caught. So on this particular machine, I need to make sure my needle's in the right place for the threader. So I have to do needle up and down till the needle's up in the proper place. Bring my foot up and thread my needle. Now, again, here's my mark. And here's the seam. I'm going to start just outside the seam. And I'm in the seam allowance, so it won't bother anything. But I'm going to sink my needle using my wheel. Lock it. And then stitch. And again, I can lock it here. Okay, and now see where I did that dart? Do you see? It brings that bottom in a little more so it'll go under your chin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim away the rest of the seam allowance so that it is right there. Now I'm going to do the same to this one, and I just want to double check that I'm on the inside because they both look the same. So I want to be on the same side as where I can see my pocket. So again I marked on the wrong side. So I'm going to just come up, make that mark across, make the one at the bottom, and I'll hold it up so you can see and connect the two. Can you see? And it's just a guideline. And I know I got a lot of fabric here because I've got four seams, two seams together. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 pieces of fabric there. So I'm going to be very careful to come in. I want to make sure that underneath here isn't puckered. And I'm going to put my needle down. I don't want to be at the very edge. I'm going to come in a little bit because I can stitch backwards once I'm going. So I'm going to put my foot down. I'm going to make sure this is lined up appropriately. I'm going to stitch a little forward, and then I'm going to stitch back to the very edge. And I'm going to lock my stitch. Okay, now at this point I have my dart in, and I may want to try this on or have the person try it on, make sure it fits okay, and then I'm going to take away the excess seam. So if you can see, I'm just going to cut some of that bulk away. And that'll help when you put your binding on, that you don't have all that double seam allowance in there. So next we'll be getting ready to bring this down. We're going to pin these in place, and I can have one dot going one way, one dot going the other. I'm sorry, clip them in place. And I'm going to clip it so I'm sewing from the mask side, the pocket side. I got threads. Let me trim some of these threads off. And then I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Okay, we're getting ready to sew the bottom of the pocket to the front of the mask. Again, we want to stay 1/8 of an inch. We want to be inside that 1/4 inch. I'm going to start a little bit before the mask. Before the pocket. Do a little locking stitch. Make sure that my pocket and my mask fabrics are lined up together. When I get in towards the center, I want to make sure I push the whole mask down instead of being pushed up like that is. We want to push it down. Make sure everything's laying flat, and make sure that pocket and mask front are lined up together. Again, make sure everything is nice and flat and even. I can go past the pocket again, do my locking stitch. Oh. And you can see and when you're working with this, you just want to keep pushing so that all the sections get all pushed in together. And now we're coming up to the last part of the binding on the bottom, and we're going to do it just like the top. So I'll show you how to pin the binding on, or strap binding, one more time. Okay, so now we're ready to put on our bottom part of our binding strap, and it'll go right along here, the same as we did the top. I'm going to go ahead and trim my edges this time ahead of time. So I just took off the salvage edge. I'm going to go ahead and fold this over. I'm just going to put a little clip on it. And I'm going to do the other side, the other end. Well, I'm not cutting straight today. There we go. And fold that one over 1/2 inch. Put a clip on that. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch that right down there like we did before, and I'll be right back. So I've gone ahead and stitched down each end. Now I just have to fold them back like they were in half. Remember, this is folded in half. You can take it to your iron. I'm just going to give it a little roller press. And now I'm going to, the same as we did on the first part, I'm just going to find the center of my, well, I want to make sure it's not all twisted first. I'm going to find the center of my binding strap by just folding it in half. I got a little crease. Remember, I'm going to be pinning to the wrong side. So I'm just going to take where the crease is, and I'm going to pin it right to where the seam is. I'm sorry, clip it. I keep saying pin it, but we're clipping. I'm going to go on either side of that seam, and I'm not going to worry about, because we now have that dot there, you've got this little kind of comes down, but we'll take care of that when we come by on the sewing machine. So again, I'm going to work my way out to the edge of the mask, and then I'm going to go to the other side. And work my way out again. So I'm all pinned together, and here's my excess. I'm going to start again like I did last time. I'm going to start here. I'm going to go across with my full 1/4 inch seam, and then I'm going to keep going just like I did before. So I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Okay, we're ready to sew again. We're on the last leg of our journey on the mask. We're going to start at a little off of the mask, start sewing down. We're going to come around, and then we'll just keep right on going like I did on the first one. So I'm going to move my clip in a little bit, and I'm just going to start stitching that 1/4 inch, just a little before the actual mask starts. I can lock it if I want to. It's not necessary, but I can, you know, if it's more comfortable, go ahead and do it. It's no problem. I'm doing my regular 1/4 inch seam. I want to make sure that I keep track of the binding and the mask, that they're together. I've got my fabric. Now I've got to make sure I push that down so it lies flat. And I'm holding this. Remember, we got that little curve where the dart is. So I'm just going to go a little bit at a time. And if I need to, see, I got a little extra binding there now. So I just need to pull that, but not too much, because I don't want to pull it out of that center section. So I want to make sure I stitch a little bit past that center seam, and see how I got a little extra there now. Just adjust that. Just sew off a little bit for the moment, and I'm going to lock it and cut. Okay, and now I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. I'm going to turn this, so I'll meet you over at the work table. Okay, so we've done that little sewing there. Now it's time to turn our binding around to the front. Make sure we give it a little tug. Starting at the center, I'm going to fold this over, put my clip in. Remember, I'm going to be sewing from this direction, so the flat part of my clip is down. I'm going to work my way out to the edge of the mask from the center. And when I get out here, I'm going to fold in this raw edge side and fold over the top So now it's nice and secured in there with no raw edges. I'm just going to come out a little bit and put a couple clips. And I'm going to come to the other side. Again, I'm going to give that a little tug, bring that over, put a clip in. I'm at the end again, and remember last time I started over here and I went across and I kept on going. So I'm just going to fold some of the raw edge in and fold it over so it's encased inside. And I'm a little crooked there, so I got to make sure I get both of these. Sorry if my fingers are in the way. I want to make sure I get both of these raw edges. So I'm just going to undo this a minute so I can grab onto these two raw edges together. And I'm going to fold it in, fold it over. So now I can put that clip back on. I'm folding this over so that this raw edge is encased in underneath this folded edge. And I'm just going to clip a few because I'm going to go ahead and fold as I go. So I'm going to start off of the mask, stitch over, and then keep right on going. I'll see you at the sewing machine. Okay, we're at the sewing machine again. Remember, here's what we're sewing. I'm going to start a little ways off the mask, so I'm just going to slide this clip down so that I can get started in here. I just got another thread hanging. So I'm going to start stitching along here, and let me see if I can open it. So see, this is open. I'm going to make sure I close that, and I'm stitching like I did before, right along this side edge, not too close to the edge, but enough to hold down that top, which will hold that raw edge, those raw edges inside. So I got my foot is past the clips. I'm going to put my needle down first so I know right where it needs to be. Then I'm going to put my foot down. I'm going to go ahead and do my locking stitch. And I'm going to start my sewing. Now this time I don't have to worry about that metal piece because that's on the other side. It's not on this bottom. Just going to take my time because I have that little bit of curve where that dart was. That's okay. As long as I keep this fabric all nice and flat here. Get past that center seam, and then I'll be able to swing it around. Okay, I've sewn to the edge of the mask. Now I'm going to continue down, and now remember, I'm holding my finger here to hold this in place. So I can take the clip out of the way. Go a little ways. Fold in the raw edge. Fold over the folded edge. Continue on. Fold in the raw edge. Fold over the folded edge. Folding in the raw edge, then folding over the folded edge, folding in the raw edge, folding over the folded edge, trying to get rid of some of these extra threads, folding in the raw edge, folding over the folded edge, and now I'm at that end. Well, we already finished that end off, so we don't have to worry about folding anything in. Get near the edge, go back, come forward to the edge, then go back again, lock the stitch, and cut it. Trim off the extra threads, and there we go. Now I just got to come back around to the other side, and start stitching again. So I'm going to find my spot where I was stitching, drop my needle down in that stitching, lock the stitch. Oh, I'm going to put my foot down. Lock the stitch. Okay, now I've got to, now this time I have to pay a little more attention. So let's turn this over, because I have it so that my raw edge is up here and my folded edge up is on the other side, and we want to be the other way around. So I'm just going to flip this over. I wanted you to see that. In case you do that, you want to make sure that you're folding in your raw edge and you can see where you're folding in that folded edge, because you want to be able to know where you're stitching on it. So your folded edge should be on top. So again, I'm going to put my needle down using my wheel where I had my other stitching, lock it, and let me see if I can come in a little closer for you for this part again, and hopefully it stays nice and focused for you, because you can see it much better here. So I'm going to fold in the raw edge and I'm going to fold over the folded edge. Now this folded edge doesn't go past the fabric that's already there. Okay, folding in the raw edge, folding over the folded edge. Folding in the raw edge, folding over the folded edge. Folding in the raw edge, folding over the folded edge. Folding in the raw edge, folding over the folded edge. Folding in the raw edge, folding over the folded edge. I'm going to get rid of some of this mess that's here. I'm sorry, because every time I put my hands out, you get cloudy vision there. Folding in, folding over. And I can come right down to my end. Hold it. I'm just going to hold it with my fingers. Coming almost to the edge. stitching back, and then stitching forward, stitching back, and cutting. And we're done again. Oop, there we go. Okay, so you meet me back at the table, and I'll show you how to finish up. Okay, I've cut a piece of my filter, and I'm going to do another disclaimer. I'm not telling you what filter to use, what one's best, what one's harmful. I don't know. You'll have to check yourself. I know that people have recommended HEPA vacuum bags or some kind of filters. I found this filter that was for a furnace or for air conditioner, I'm not sure, and it had on it that it protected you from bacteria and virus, so I used that. It has this metal on it, which helps form around the nose. Is the metal harmful near your face? Not that I know of, but again, I'm not going on record as saying one thing works, one thing is good for you, one thing's not. I don't know. So I'm simply going to fold this in so those metal edges aren't out. So you'll cut your filter if you're going to use one. Some people don't use one. I've heard people say, you know, felt or whatever. So if you're wearing the mask over a regulatory mask, then you don't need to put anything in. But this is made so whatever type of filter you may want to put in, you can put it in, take it out, throw it away, wash the mask, put a new filter in. So all I did was, and I just got to fold this in a little more, is make it so it fits inside the pocket, and I can just pull it through from the other side. I'm going to turn it around this way. Turn it around, put it in, pull it through to the other side, or in from the other side, so that it's all inside of your little pocket. And there's your mask. Okay, if it doesn't come out perfect, don't worry about it. If your dart isn't perfect, it's okay. This one here, I got a little, see, I got a little crease of fabric there. It's all right. It's a mask. It's meant to help you. It's not a preventative. There's nothing reassurance that it's going to take care of everything. But in most cases, if you have a cold or if you're sneezing or whatever, it protects other people from you. And if it gives you a level of comfort to have some kind of mask, that's entirely up to you. This is just something that I'm making for my friends and family. And see, my little nose piece is right here. So once you put it on, you're going to just pinch this so it goes around your nose. You have your ties to go around. This one should be up over your ears, and this comes up the side. If your sides are too wide, let me show you at the sewing machine what to do. Okay, so if you find that these sides are too wide, you can just take a pleat or two pleats, however you want to do it, but make sure, oops, sorry, yep, pleat, see? Make sure that your pleat is facing down so that when you come across with the sewing machine, it's this way. If you came across with the sewing machine, it would do this. And also, you don't want to create a pocket here if your mask is going on this way. This mask goes this way, so you want that pleat facing down, okay? So all I'm going to do is, I've got my fold, and I'm simply going to start at the top of the mask after the binding or strap part. I'm going to do a little lock in place, and it's going to make a little extra noise because of the layers we're going through. don't have a machine that feeds well, you may need to help it pull it through. And I'm going to lock again and cut. And now my mask comes in a little closer because this is over by the ears. So I'm going to do the same on the other side, and I'm going to look and go, oh yeah, I can see that's about ½ inch or so. I'm going to come to the other side, and remember, I have to fold down so I don't make a little crumb catcher on my mask. So I'm folding down. So in order for me to sew this so that I'm sewing down and not sewing up and have this flip, my mask is over to the right side of my needle, which normally isn't where your fabric is. Does it have to be exactly the same as the other side? Not really. If you want to make it exact, it's okay. If you're making a lot of these, then you won't be exact after a while, because you just, it's utilitarian. Oh, had my fingers in the way again from you, okay? And then I really need some lotion. I've washed my hands too much. I'm locking my stitch. I'm done. So see, I've taken it in on each side. You notice my filter was already in there, but that's okay. I'm out here at the edge. My filter is way up here, way up on this side. Whoop, there you go. So let's go back to the work table. Okay, so we put those little tucks on each side if you need them. Okay, trim up your threads. Top in here is where your metal piece is. Okay, bottom under the chin, and you're all set to go. I hope you enjoy making this mask. And again, I'm not saying it's approved by anybody except by me. Thank you.